Hey ladies and gents, welcome to the Colorado River. Today I was sitting there just, taking my rest and relaxing, and I had something come across my feed here on the Guardsman On channel that it's something I've been saying for a long time, and it's pretty disturbing. The pharmaceutical companies and their affiliates, namely the doctors doctors plural, who are on their payroll, the pharmaceutical payroll, and the nurses and hospital figures who are on the pharmaceutical payroll. Most of these doctors and nurses don't understand that Big Pharma is interested in doing one thing and one thing only very well, and that is pleasing their benefactors. Their benefactors are, well, the enemy of all nations, the enemy of all free peoples. And that would be those interested in utilizing their positions to influence and govern and rule over a particular group of people. That particular group of people is what some would call deplorables, the people who they don't like, the people that they don't want to hear speak because they're speaking uncomfortable truths. These truths are not always self-evident until after the fact, because hindsight is 20/20. Most of the time when we're looking forward at these things, we say, oh, well, people couldn't be that bad. They couldn't be that evil, that intrinsically horrible of a person. I'm sorry, but if anybody is going to point out to you that people are fucking sick, I guess it has to be me, the man who has been for, let's see here now, 5 years, 12 years, something like that. In the general vicinity of there, because I can't really divulge more than that. I've been standing against these people. I've been talking out about these people. I've been speaking up. And because my voice is not something that is considered appropriate content, censorship much, because what I speak is not appropriate content, I've been not just censored or shadow banned or demonetized. Let me be very clear. I started off Guardsman On channel as a troll account. It was just a goofball, one-off. I'm gonna go and make all these people feel stupid because, hey, they are stupid. They don't understand rational logic and sense. You can't believe everything you hear, but at the same time, you can't just rule it out completely because it sounds outlandish. Math, science, logic, reasoning, these are the things that keep us from being animals with a I must survive at all costs, including those I most cherish mentality. Now, understand, animals, they have this I must protect my own brood mentality, just like humans do. Wow, what a concept. They have maternal and paternal instinct. Huh, go figure. That's not just a human trait. Opposable thumbs, those are not just a human trait. Monkeys can do it too. Oh, here's an interesting one for you. Did you ever know that a dog can shoot a rifle? Yeah, I tested that. Guess what? They can. With proper instruction, a dog can utilize a dew claw or what have you to pull on the trigger of the rifle, discharging the rifle of its ammunition at the time. Of course, it's startling to an animal because they don't understand it completely. They don't know, hey, science, math, logic, reasoning. They understand physics because their lives are governed by it. But they don't understand science. Something that we humans have been able to pull apart and dissect and reason about and say, hey, wait, this is how this works. These little bits make a bigger picture of a larger whole, a mosaic, if you please. So when we look at things logically and rationally, and reason, we have to understand that human beings have not just a lizard brain, not just the the canine brain, the emotional center. We also have something that a lot of mammalian animals don't particularly prescribe. They don't necessarily have it. Some of them do. In fact, a lot of them do, and even birds and reptiles and not insects, of course, because insects, their brains are so small they actually cannot hold enough capacitance to have rational thought. They have thought, I must eat, I must survive, you are bigger, so therefore you are a threat, sort of rational thought, the lizard brain mentality. And we call it lizard brain because in non-evolved species of lizards, we'll wait for the power boat. As I was saying, in non-developed species of lizards, there is something that is almost asimilar to a part of the human brain which governs instinct and governs, yeah, you guessed it, rage. Emotions. It is the emotional center of the human brain, which is why we know crocodilians and elastropods, they tend to have instinct-driven minds and emotion-driven minds and not necessarily all that much rationality. So these animals, of course, are not what we could consider to be sentient, meaning having rational thought. So if these animals are not sentient species, yet they do show some of the things that we humans do, but not other things like rational thought and logic and science and math. The things that are much more difficult for someone to get because it's a learned behavior. It's something we have to actually cognizantly take in, which is where the mammalian brain comes in. That is the large prefrontal, frontal, cerebral, and cerebellal cortexes. These large mushy parts of the brain that surround the lizard brain and the canine brain. So these are the things that define we human beings and most other sentient creatures as being of an intelligence above, a capability of learning and understanding. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, what about the pharmaceutical companies and all of these other unintentional consequences of greed. Well, greed does play into several different parts of life. That being money, the ability to procure, power, the ability to enforce, and also there's one other thing that all politicians, all soldiers, sailors, Marines, Minutemen, every possible militarized organization understands, and that is intimidation factor. Wolves understand intimidation factor. And anybody who says, oh no, they don't, they're just stupid dogs, let me point something out to you. Wolves are the only canine with scientific understanding. These animals can actually understand science and how things work. Not just the social hierarchies and where's my next meal coming from. They can understand things like cold and how to make it hot. They understand explosions a lot better than we humans actually give them credit for. Okay, and this is what plays into the domesticated dog, our personal best friends as the human species. Our symbiotic relationship with canines goes way back. And so we were able to understand back then that wolves, in particular, had that ability. They had this precognizance, this knowledge that they could know how things work and be able to avoid danger or induce a stronger intimidation factor through their knowledge and their abilities. Well, we see this and we go, okay, well, the wolves are a little too smart for our good. But we're also smart and we live longer. And we've seen how, the one wolf comes in out of the cold, and then the next wolf will, or the wolf that comes in out of the cold, and then we have a second wolf comes in out of the cold, and they breed, right? And they make little wolf babies. And this pack stays here with us humans. And so over time, we affect their evolution. And their evolution becomes more and more cognizant and less instinctual, which means that they don't necessarily understand danger, even though they can cognitively understand science, logic, and reason. See, animals are not as stupid as people give them credit for. In fact, animals are very, very, very intelligent. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story. Try and keep up here, okay? When I was, about 3 years old, my mom and my dad decided that they wanted to get a little puppy for me, as a kind of companion, because at about 2.5, 3 years old, I didn't have a little sister. I have two now, and God bless them, they're amazing women. But I digress. I was speaking on my dog, and I'm going to point it out. This was my dog who, if you ever get a chance to speak to me or whatever, and I tell you this story, or a story like it, and it's about this dog, understand this dog really did exist, and he was an incredibly intelligent dog. Okay, so let's get into it. When I was about 3 years old, my mom and dad got a dog named Toby. And he was a shelter pet, he had been beaten and had been maced by mailmen, and had been he'd been beaten by a police officer quite horribly, disfigured him pretty bad. I mean, his front leg was always kind of a little wonky, but he was an enormous dog for his breed. He was a Cocker Spaniel, Springer Spaniel, and Morgan Spaniel mix, and he stood hip high to a fully grown adult. He was as big as a German Shepherd, but that wasn't his breed. He was a small, a medium-sized dog breed, not a large dog breed. So, for him to be so large, we couldn't understand it. We didn't know why this happened. But one day, Toby jumped the fence at our house, and he got out into the street. And our next door neighbor was a truck driver, and he had been coming home from work that day, come in to just stop by and see his wife, and, great guy for the most part, great guy. And he stopped by to see his wife. Well, my dog Toby had run out in the middle of the street, and the truck in front of him, who was going just down the street to their house, they worked in the same trucking company, the same logistics company, and he saw my dog run out in front of this guy's truck, and this guy tried to lock up his brake. He couldn't stop. You can't stop a tractor trailer and tractor when you're moving at speed. So and the relative speed on Monroe Boulevard was 45 miles an hour. So understand, he had a stopping distance of 15 feet, and the roads were wet, so his stopping distance increased tenfold, meaning that instead of 15 feet it was 150 feet. So he slams on his brakes because he sees, this is his next door neighbor's, or his buddy's next door neighbor's dog that just ran out in front of him in the street, and he tried to halt and tried to stop and couldn't do it. I mean, you can't stop a semi truck on a dime. So Turbo, that's what we called him, was Turbo after the fact. He did some more things that earned him that name. But Toby, he rolled underneath, end over end, not side on, but end over end, underneath that semi-trailer, and he had his head almost caved in, his hips were crushed, and this dog was so beat down, just a bag of bones and sinew. I mean, he was just beaten beyond recognition by this truck. Well, my next door neighbor, he was able to stop just in the nick of time, and he ran out in front of his truck and grabbed Toby up by, in both of his arms, and ran down the street to where we were, because by this time Turbo had been dragged several yards. I mean, past the next intersection, which was 22nd and Monroe in Ogden, Old Ogden, Utah, up on the bench. Well, he got rolled up underneath this truck, and when the neighbor picked him up and ran him up to the house, my mom, who knew that it just was not something that at the time I could handle, because I didn't understand at that time death and injury of that magnitude. My mom told our next door neighbor, his name's Tom, okay? I'm going to use names, I'm going to use all of this, so, understand that this is 100% the truth. I'm never going to hold back. Well, Tom, he jumps into the truck, which my dad had left parked at the house, and took my mom's car. So my dad, Tom jumps into the truck holding Turbo, and my mom jumps into the driver's seat and drives him straight to the animal hospital. And he arrived at the animal hospital with probably minutes to spare, and they got him on the operating table inside of 5 minutes, and they were able to save Turbo's life. And surprisingly, they were able to save his ability to walk. I mean, this is a dog that literally got hit by a semi truck. All right, we're talking at least 5 tons of moving steel. All right, he really got hurt bad, but they were able to save his back. They were able to save his legs, his neck. He'd had fractures in his neck, his spine, his tail, both back legs, both hips. His pelvis was crushed. His ribs had been fractured in 4 different places, and the top of his skull had been caved. They thought he was going to die. My dad showed up about an hour afterwards, and they're trying to save Toby. And my dad comes into the clinic, and he tells the nurse on call, the receptionist at the desk. He tells her, "I don't care how much it costs. You save my boy's dog. You hear me? You save my boy's dog." Now, I've only heard that tone of voice a couple of times from my dad. Only a couple of times. And let me tell you, when he speaks like that, it's so fucking dead serious that death himself will fucking back the fuck up. So this nurse goes and runs to the back and tells the veterinarian on call and says, "Hey, Mr. Price is here. He's adamant. You have to save this dog, no matter what it takes, no matter how bad. Save this dog." So God bless that man. He saved my dog. And yes, he was my dog. I mean, he wasn't really my mom's dog or my dad's dog or my sister's dog after the fact. He was my dog. He loved me, and I was the one who fed him. I was the one who took care of him. I was the one who bandaged his wounds. I was the one who took him out on, walks, runs, hunting missions, all that sort of stuff. So this dog was everything to me, and I was everything to him. So fast forward a couple years after, he made a speedy recovery. And it was the first couple of weeks that he wouldn't recover. He was trying to refuse food. He wanted to die. But then he realized that we would not let him die, that we loved him so much. That dog became a human being. He cognitively understood irrational love. And the kind of love that is destructive when it is not seen to. Well, because he understood that, and because he made the effort to come back afterwards, we relativistically understood that this dog was, for some reason or another, our protector. He loved us, and we loved him. So, like I said, fast forward a couple of years, and my little sisters had both been born. My youngest sister had just been born. She was a baby. She was an infant at the time. And my other sister was, toddler, roughly 2 years old at the most, maybe 3 at the most. Anyways, some fella, don't know who he was. Pardon me. I don't know who he was. Guy, the thought to this day makes me want to vomit. But he came walking up to our front lawn, saw that, the dog wasn't in the front yard, or so he thought. saw that, there was no animal in the front yard, and saw that my little sister was out there playing in the mud puddles while I was inside and, doing just running in, taking my medication at the time. And Toby sees this guy walk up, sees him come through the fence, doesn't do anything, doesn't do a single thing. Doesn't bark, doesn't yip, doesn't snarl, doesn't nothing. Dead silence. He's sitting up underneath a juniper bush that used to sit out in front of our old house. And I say used to because I've been back there since, and they ripped that juniper bush out, which, to me, that's just vile. But anyways, I digress again. Toby goes up out of this bush so fast that there were juniper berries that were scattered throughout the yard. And we saw this, and my dad made me pick up every juniper berry afterwards, but still, he saw my dog come blowing out of there through the front window of the house, because he was home that day. It was a Saturday. He comes blowing out through the front of the house, and he sees, this guy sees him, and he tries to step outside of the gate with my little sister in tow. And my dad sees all this, he's not a fucking dude he was not a dude you wanted to piss off in those days. He was 10 times the man I'll ever be. So anyways, he sees this guy try to take my little sister with him. And then of all the most comedic moments in life, Toby goes through 2 sets of dogwood picket fence like they were matchsticks. Blows through this fence and takes this guy by the calf of the leg and rips a chunk out of his leg bigger than my head. Well, the guy's pissed, he's mad because my dog just fucking grabbed a hold of him and ripped a hole in him. He was not he was not happy. He was mad. So he comes up to the front of the house, beats down the door. And my dad's, he's not stupid. He watched all this shit unfold. So he comes to the door, and he's like, hey, whatever, Hi, I'm John Price. How may I help you? Is there any particular reason why you came inside the fence without, me or my family knowing you? And he goes, man, fuck that shit. Your dog just fucking bit me outside your fence. Well, my dad looked at him, looked at the fence, kind of does this sort of a move and goes, well, he don't do that sort of shit on a regular basis, so what'd you do to piss him off? My dad, God bless this man. He was a genius. Above all geniuses. This guy was super smart. So, anyways, this guy, he's sitting there, he's fucking talking shit. You did this, and your dog is in, and I'm gonna sue you blind. Well, about that point in time, my dog's sitting there growling at him, and my dad calls back to the back of the house where I'm at in the kitchen, and he goes, hey, Blaine, come get your dog. So I run out to the front of the house, and I come running up to Turbo, and I grab a hold of him, and I'm holding him back. Right now, he's really mean and pissed because he's trying to protect his kids, because we were his kids, and he didn't want me to hold him, but he was not going to hurt me for the world. So he sat there and he let me hold him, arms around his neck like so, hugging him with his head right here on my neck. Don't, Toby, don't. Turbo, don't do this. Don't, no, boy. Okay? Well, this guy turns around to my dad and says the fucking stupidest shit anyone could. I'm gonna fucking shoot that dog. Oh, the fuck, no, you didn't. Now, let's be right clear. My daddy don't put up with bullshit. He's the one who taught me. He hit that man so damn hard, you could have probably heard it all the way down in Wasatch. So, understand when I say, when a price man says you're done, run, motherfucker, run. My daddy told this man, you're done, motherfucker. And before this guy could move, my dad hit him so fucking hard, he flew off of a flight of 5 concrete steps going up to the front of our house and landed on his ass with enough force that the senior center across the way had to call the police because of a loud noise ordinance being broken. Now, that being said, I know that's kind of funny when you think about it, but it's very true. So, my dad decides, I've had enough of this horse shit. I'm gonna get my kids inside, and now I'm gonna really hurt this motherfucker. Well, my dad grabs me and my dog and pulls us back inside the house, and then calls my sister and goes, China, get in here. And she comes running into the house, and he slams the door behind him. And now we're all wondering what the hell's going on. Because, this is my dad, this is the man who basically, he makes everything possible at the house. He's the one who fucking tells people, don't you mess with my son, don't you mess with my daughters, don't you hurt my dog, don't you dare touch my wife. This is that man, all right? So I'm worried because, at the time, I don't know who this guy is. I had no idea what kind of demeanor he had, who he could possibly be. So, my dad, he walks down the front steps, and by this time, this guy's already scrambling to his feet and limping down the front walk, going, don't hurt me, don't hurt me. My dad says, motherfucker, I ain't gonna hurt you. I'm gonna kill you. Well, needless to say, that man went and filed a police report. My dad got thrown in jail for 2 days. He was arraigned and acquitted in the same day. Now, I'm also going to point out something else to you. My dad was defending our lives, which is something that made it worthy, which is why he was acquitted. Now, I didn't know at the time about any of this pharmaceutical crap. I didn't know any of this. But somehow my dog knew. He wouldn't eat the pills we gave him. He wouldn't take the antibiotics. He wouldn't take anything, we could barely give him a shot. And that's when I had to be sitting there holding him and making sure he didn't bite the veterinarian. Now, mind you, he loved the veterinarian. But when he came around him with a needle, Toby was a whole different animal. I wish I would have known then what I know now. Toby was trying to tell us something. Chemicals that are not supposed to be in your body should never be put there. Regardless of, the good side effects, the bad ones are what he was pointing out to us. Our medicine isn't good enough. And if our medicine's not good enough for a dog, what the fuck makes you think it's good enough for a human? I don't know the answer to that question. So I will allow you to try to explain it to me, but understand I'm probably going to shoot you down. I mean, the reality of the situation is there is no measure of medicine that outweighs the direct consequence of taking that medicine. And I hate saying this because I believe still in some efforts of Western medicine and in some efforts of Chinese medicine and in all efforts of homeopathics. Now, that being said, I want you to understand that everything has a side effect. Everything. There's a side effect to you running. It's called sore knees and shin splints. But when it comes down to it, there's no homeopathic remedy or Chinese remedy or, a natural action that a human being, goes through in everyday life, mind you. I'm not talking about the one-offs. I'm talking about every single day. There is not one thing that has a side effect, especially well known, but for that matter, any side effect, that is equivalent to the side effects of Western medicine. For instance, one of the newest painkillers that are out on the market today, it was derived from kratom, which is supposed to be a homeopathic remedy and a very useful plant. It's called Toradol, or Torodendron. And Torodendron, or kratom derivative, which is what Toradol is, has been proven to cause heart attacks, dementia in perfectly healthy patients, and has been known to cause cardiovascular and pulmonary issues. Now, cardiovascular meaning your veins, okay? All the veins you see running down the back of my hand there, yeah, well, that's cardiovascular. Pulmonary, that's your lungs. And, yeah, I've had, since the age of 21, because I've been forced to take Toradol, because I won't take opiates, I refuse to. It's one of them things, I get easily addicted, so I refuse to take opiates. I now refuse to take Toradol, but it's, day late, dollar short. I've had no less than, see here, 21 I had 4, 25 I had 2, no, I had 3, because I had one while I was on an operating table. 28 I had one, and just this last year, the age of 30, I had another one. And what I'm talking about is heart attacks. Now, when I say heart attacks, it's mostly palpitations, followed by an intense, crushing kind of pain, like an elephant sitting on your chest, like asthmatics know. And then there's this dizzy, just delirium kind of. I just took fucking 4 Vicodin, that kind of dizzy, delirium kind of wooey, but. I hadn't taken anything, I hadn't even taken an aspirin. And so when this happened, I was just completely shocked. I was like, wait, every single time it happened too. I mean, it wasn't just the first time. The first time I was just stunned. Stupefied. Imagine this, you're a 21-year-old in the prime of your life. You ride a bicycle every single day to work. Every single day from work. Over 15 miles one way. I woke up in a hospital with a doctor telling me, you had a myocardial infarction. It means that one of the valves in your heart cramped, closed. And the pump part of it couldn't force any fluid past that valve. And so it finally cramped full. And that could cause huge blood clots in your heart. Now, it cramped full, and I passed out in the middle of a street, right in front of a couple who were coming home from their dinner. And, this was about a week after I'd had a bicycle crash, which had wrapped me around a street sign at about 35 miles an hour. I had a bruise that went from shoulder to hip. And it was just one big long line about that wide. So for reference, about that wide from this hip to the opposing, from this shoulder to the opposing hip. Or actually vice versa, it was this shoulder to the opposing hip. And they had injected me with Toradol because the pain was so great I could not breathe. Now I understand what they were doing was trying to save my life, and I'm not angry at all at those doctors. Okay? I understand and I asked them about it later, okay, because I wanted to know. But and it was the same doctor who had operated on me just not even a month and a half later, after having my skull crushed by a street fight. So I know that this doctor had my best interest at heart, and he really wanted to try and help me. Okay, and I know that he probably wouldn't have used Toradol if he had another option. But I refused opiates. He tried to give me morphinol, and I refused it outright because I had been previously addicted to Vicodin in such profusion because of a back injury that I had working construction that I couldn't stand up straight. To this day, I still kind of walk funky because of my back, but it's more to do with my abdominal wall that I don't stand up straight now. But, it's mostly the abs, some of it's the back, okay? And it's still to this day, I've never been able to get rid of that injury. So, basically, to the sidebar, that injury nearly cost me my life, and then nearly cost me my life a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. Anyways, back to the story at hand. They put me on Toradol, and not a week later, I had a heart attack. Nearly fatal. Would have been fatal if I had not made it to a hospital within 25 minutes. That's what the doctor told me. So, fast forward 2 months. 2 months. And I get into a gnarly street fight. One where I just didn't see it coming. I mean, there's just no way you can see a punch like that coming, or, once the first blow lands and lands good, and really counts, you're not going to get up. It doesn't matter how fucking tough or badass you are, or how much of a fighter you are, how good you are in a fight. You're not going to hold your own with half your skull crushed in and a dude's fist impression against the side of your head. So I wheeled myself. I barely got away. I mean, I would have been dead that night if I had not, because the guy was intent on beating me to death, and that's obvious. I mean, if it wouldn't have been for my other buddy sitting there, and God bless his soul, rest in peace, brother. I miss you a lot. That's a story for another time. But if it wouldn't have been for him, I wouldn't have made it down the street to my house at the time, and had the nurses seen me with blood coming from my nose, down my face, covering the front of my shirt. I mean, from side to end, side to side. I looked like a piece of hamburger that Rocky Balboa had fun with. So, understand, nobody is infallible. Nobody can be ever remaining unbeaten. Everybody can be beaten, and it doesn't matter who you are. If you become so badass that people think that they can't hold their own against you in a real fight, and just a one-on-one stand to, they are going to use every effort that they've got to try and do it without having to stand toe-to-toe to you. And he did. He knew I was night blind. He knew I didn't have the ability to see at night after looking into bright lights. And that's the same for most human beings. I mean, we all have iris muscles that, dilate and contract in order to allow light into the eye, across the lens, and into the retina. Well, knowing this amount of science gave him an upper hand with me, because at the time, we were all just a bunch of pot-smoking buddies, and we were hanging out. I thought nothing of it. I thought, hey, this is the homeboy. We always smoke together. I fucking smoke this dude out all the time. We cool. No, for some reason, and I didn't know this at the time, but he had caught a wind of something that I did at the, back when I was young and dumb and shouldn't have been doing it in the first place, and I know that now. And I'll never do it again. I don't give a fuck how good the money was, or, how much people say, hey, you can make millions this way, baby. No, I can't. I'm too nice of a guy. Somebody swings on me when I know it's coming, I'll rip them a new asshole. But, otherwise, I'm just I'm a regular old average Joe, nice guy, want to be your friend, not your enemy. So, he sucker punches me, after blinding me, and knocks me over the top of a retaining wall and beats the shit out of me and whatnot. So later, fast forward, later on, I'm down at the hospital. The same doctor comes to me and he says, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to give you another shot of this stuff. This stuff, just a few months ago, you came in and whatnot, and I was telling you the hazards of it. I really don't want to give you another shot if you can stand not having to have another shot. And I said, I don't want one. If that's what caused my heart attack, I don't want one. And I don't want opiates. And I don't want painkillers. I'll deal with it. And the doctor says, well, have you been taking anything, for your stress and your anxiety? And I said, yeah, I've been smoking pot. And there's a good damn reason for it too. So if you want to throw me under the bus and send me to jail, guess what? We're going to have a fight in court, and I'll win. And he goes, no, I don't want to send you to jail at all. I don't think at all that way. As a matter of fact, I'm glad that you're smoking weed. It shows that you have cognizant control of your destiny. Now, understand, this is after a long time of having to learn this the hard way. This is after, being on prescription pain medications, prescriptions, antipsychotics, prescription this and prescription that. I mean, you name it, I've been on it. And I'm not bullshitting about that. Okay, I just recently I had to take, what's it called? Xarelto. Because of my heart issues, and I'm thankfully I don't have to anymore. It's highly toxic and it can kill you in a matter of minutes, sort of thing. So you got to be very careful about dosage, and can't take aspirin with it. It's very dangerous of a chemical. So understand, like I said, I've been on everything. You cannot name one drug that I've not been on. That includes heroin, that includes PCP, that includes methamphetamines, that includes opium, that includes everything. Mushrooms, name it. Been on it. So when I say that, it took a long time for me to figure out that, where I am at, and, what I'm doing with my life, and how I'm staying alive, and how I'm, treating my injuries and my maladies, is the way that I should have been treating them from the beginning. I want you to understand and learn from my experience. I have almost died more times than I have fingers and phalanges to count. I have almost died so many times that now I'm not afraid of it. I'm not scared anymore. People say, oh, well, everybody's afraid. Well, what happens when that part of your brain doesn't work anymore? What happens when the part of your brain that is supposed to be afraid because it knows you're gonna die, or you could die, and it doesn't want to, it wants to continue? What happens when that part doesn't work anymore? Well, a few things happen. One, you become incredibly sensitive to all manners of drugs, chemicals, what so have you. And your liver and your kidneys and your pancreas and your gallbladder and your spleen and your heart and all of your internal organs, they can shut down much quicker. And it only takes a couple of mere minutes. Whereas most people it takes days, because the brain is telling the body to not die. And the body is telling the brain, motherfucker, I can't take it anymore. No. The brain's not telling that part of my body to not do that anymore. So now I have to fight to keep it alive. Which means that when I smoke pot, one hit, I'm done. I drink alcohol, one beer, I am wasted. Every time I smoke a cigarette, or I puff on my tobacco pipe, I get the same buzz that I got when I took the first hit off of my first cigarette in my entire life. Now, some of you might say, hey, that's fucking cool, man. You can get a buzz from nothing. Yeah. I can get a buzz from freaking doing too many push-ups. But, you know, when it comes down to it, you're not supposed to. That's not something that you can actually handle. So, I want to be very clear when I say this. Psychological drugs, regardless of the disease that they are trying to treat, which is not a disease, it is simply a piece of our evolution. They are meant to control. And if they cannot control, then they will kill. The docs just keep on upping the dose and upping the dose and upping the dose and upping the dose, because either A, they don't understand how it works, or B, they understand that painkillers work this way, so psychotropics must as well, right? Well, you know how potheads say, you can only get so high. Medical marijuana is a psychotropic. It is a psychedelic. THC in enough profusion can cause you to have the symptoms asimilar to an acid trip. Okay, well, you know, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that psychotropics only work within a specific slot. Too little, not enough. Too much, oh well, that's not going to work either, okay? It's got to be right in the sweet zone. My sweet zone's down here. Most people's sweet zone's right about here nowadays. Still, some people are like right in the middle of that. Alright, and some people are way over here where they got to take, you know, so much THC into their bodies, like way over here, you know. They need to take so much THC into their bodies that they physically cannot possibly understand how toxic it can actually be in those amounts. So I'm going to say this. Every week, okay? This is not just 1 week, every month, or whatnot. No. Every week. Take 2 days off. Let your body come back down. Let your liver reproduce the endocannabinoids that your body naturally uses, if it can do that. Okay, mine can't. That's why I only normally do 1 day unless I'm forced into doing more, which I am doing now, but I want it to be clear, you know, your endocannabinol system starts with your liver, it ends with your spleen. It affects your brain. And that's why most human beings are amicable human beings and nice and easy to get along with, because we all have these same parts, okay? So if we all have these same parts, then I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, you want to continue to function and be physically fit. Don't take more than one aspirin. Ever. Don't take more than one painkiller. Ever. And when I say one painkiller, I mean one pill. And take it one time. If you have to. Otherwise, your options are limited. You can become a walking corpse. Because the moment that you go off of these drugs, your body rejects itself. And it tries to do all these different things that it can't do anymore. And now it understands that, and so it decides, okay, I guess I'm just going to shut down. Because I can't function anymore, and you're not giving me what I need. So, I know these things. I know this personally. I've been there. I was on venlafaxine for at least 3 years straight, and intermittently for like 9, since I was 11 years old to the time I was 21. I mean, shit. It's no wonder that my liver's was nearly shot. It's no wonder that my kidneys, every time I take a piss, it smells like some chemical cocktail. Every time I sweat, it smells like death. And it really does. I mean, I know how people think when they smell me because I stink. I know it. I'm not trying to be obtrusive. I recognize that I'm obtrusive because, well, I'm sweating out toxins. I'm not sweating out regular sweat. And those toxins are sitting there and killing the top layer of my skin. As you could kind of see, all of these little pits from acne and whatnot, that's because the top layer of skin scabbed over the top of my pores that were issuing these toxins, and then the toxins would start to exacerbate the issue and create infections. So, I understood all of these things, and now looking back, I think, fuck, why couldn't I just get through to my doctors, to my nurses, to my mother? This was not the way to go. This was the wrong thing to do, and it was hurting me. I know now. I mean, now as I'm an adult, I look at children and I say, how the fuck would you know anything? And, then I go, wait a minute. Experience. See, we as adults understand experience in ways that children never could. But at the same time, we don't understand child experience. We think, oh my God, well the children say this, so it must be so. Here comes logic and reason to that particular argument. Children have experienced some things. Yes, they have. But they don't have control of how that experience affects them. Adults do. We control how an experience affects us. We can choose to let it harm us. We can choose to let it go and be just dust on the wind. We as adults have a responsibility to show children this, which is the greater good. Now, why do I come to the river for a backdrop? I've told you guys before, it's for peace of mind and for semblance of mind, but as you can see, so you can probably quite tell from the sounds, there is a lot of vehicular traffic around here, which means a lot of people. And if any of you know me well enough, you know I don't particularly like being around people, and it's because of my experiences. Well, I come out here because I want you to understand this particular zone. This is Tiger Beach, or Tiger Point, really. I believe it's E68 on the Colorado River map, lower river sectors. I could be wrong. I don't have the map in front of me, okay? But I want you to all understand that it's because of my experience with these drugs, these chemicals, and also my experience watching others and learning from their mistakes and learning from their experience and their observance, that what we have done as humans have created nothing more than chemical shackles. And that last pill is the bullet in the chamber of that gun that is to your head telling you what to do. Unfortunately, some people will never be able to function without that. It is because of this problem where our bodies, after having chemicals in them for a certain amount of time, cannot synthesize the chemical, which that chemical we put in recreates in our body. So, in retrospect, if you can avoid putting chemicals in your body for whatever reason, if it's at all possible, do so. If you can't, because say you've been on a prescription for so many years, when I say so many years, that is more than 6 and less than 10. Okay? More than 6 years, your body will have a real tough time coming back from it. But it's not impossible. After 6 years, actually after about 8 years, your body cannot synthesize those chemicals no matter what you do. No matter how hard you try, no matter what good nutrition you get, no matter the kind of exercise that you employ, no matter the kind of efforts you go through to get to that point, even if you have transplants, your body cannot synthesize these chemicals that it expects and that it needs. Now understand, nicotine is not something that is, foreign to your body. Your body makes nicotine. I'll bet most of you didn't know this. The human body runs on niacin, vitamin B12, aka nicotinic acid. Yeah, you heard that right. Oil of nicotine in its acidic form, which means it has a closer respect to sugars than carbohydrates. Now, nicotine is funny like this because when it undergoes carburization, meaning it burns, combustion, nicotine changes over to nicotinic acid and becomes vitamin B12. Sure, some of that nicotine stays nicotine. It stays, nicotine oil And when it enters your body can't break it down. And so it just comes out, through your kidneys. And it makes a chemical smell. It kind of smells like burnt coffee, and it feels like you're, well, how do I say this? Peeing out slime. Okay, it's thick urine. It feels like you're peeing out coconut oil. So I want you to understand, your body does not take in nicotine. It physically cannot. It actually rejects nicotine. But what it does accept is vitamin B12, aka niacin, aka nicotinic acid. Because your body will absorb this particular, it says, wait, no, smoke good. Which says to your brain, hey, wait, no, smoke good. I'm going to make you feel buzz. So, it kind of makes the brain go, wait, hey, this is good stuff. I want to keep on doing it. While your liver is going, oh my God, I can't keep getting this crap out. This stuff sticks to everything. Nicotine. It's toxic. Your body hates it. Actually gets rid of it in any way, shape, or form that it can. Now, nicotinic acid, on the other hand, it goes, wait, I can use that. I can make more protein with that. I can take that little molecule, attach it to this big old protein strand that would normally be too toxic for me to put into the body, into myself. It adds that little piece on there that'll add this protein in, and now I could take this protein on. And so that's why I'm, kind of between, 2% and 4% body fat, because the toxins go into fat, and then that's later on run through the kidneys and out through, the urethra. Anyways, this chemical is not for human consumption. It's not something that humans are capable of absorption. So they will pass it. We will pass it. And we, as humans, when we pass these things, our body gets a little bit more damaged. When your body gets damaged, it tries to replace those cells that are damaged. Once you hit a certain point in your life where those cells can't reproduce themselves, because the telomeres on the ends of your DNA, a little corkscrew that we call DNA, and it has these two little end caps on either side of the chromosome, that every time the chromosome splits, these end caps break off a little bit, and they attach to the new chromosome. Well, when this happens, you lose a little bit of that end cap, and it never comes back. Those telomeres never come back. And so at a certain point, you don't have enough telomeres on the ends of your chromosomes to replace chromosomes. And so you get a mutation. And this mutation becomes cancer. A cell doesn't die, instead it reproduces and reproduces and reproduces and reproduces, getting ever bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and finally overtaking the host body. Because this cell won't die now, because the body won't allow it to die. And it's all because telomeres governs both our life and our death. When you have a lot, it creates life. When you have a little bit, it can cause death. Even if that little tiny amount of telomerase is still there, because it can't split, it can cause these other problems, which cause complications, which create death. So you have to look at it retrospectively, do these chemicals help or do they hurt? In my honest opinion, most of them hurt. In fact, all of them, to some degree, hurt. They cause harm. Now, mind you, chemicals like Toradol and chemicals like venlafaxine and chemicals like trispiridol and chemicals like lithium bicarbonate disulfide, which is lithium salts, which are used in mental health treatment. They cause your body to try and break down and die. And this is a matter of controlling people. All right? I'm 31 freaking years old. I've already got gray hair. My great granddad didn't have gray hair until he was in his 50s. My dad had a full brown head of hair in his 50s. I've got grays coming out here. I got grays coming out on the top. I mean, and this is all from chemicals in my system that should not be there. That were put there by doctors, by nurses, by psychologists, because they're not doctors. I don't give a fuck if they say, oh, well, I got a doctorate. Too bad. You're not a doctor. You're a dumbass with a book who's trying to make sense of something that you can't. Okay? Because you don't understand evolution. And it was also by effective lawyers. Precisely why I have a particular hatred. And I don't use that term lightly. Ever. So understand, when I hate somebody for what they stand for or for what they are standing by, I want you to understand, if it was acceptable, I would beat them into a pulp. But it's not. So I won't. And that is because human beings don't understand that, other human beings see dollar signs while they're seeing family, life, friends, loved ones in pain. Afraid. And because they're afraid, and because they know this pain is happening, they want to do anything they can. It doesn't matter how drastic, to try and protect those people from that pain, from that strife. And they don't understand that it is pain and strife, it is these experiences that create who we are as a human species. As individuals, our experiences aid our ability to survive, to thrive, and to reproduce. If you don't have the, sexual experience that's necessary, a woman's gonna look at you kind of like, yeah, dude, you're not there yet. Little higher there, Einstein. Guys, you know what I'm talking about. Ladies, y'all know even better. I'm pointing out to you that If you don't have those life experiences, you're less likely to be able to. Now, if you don't have the physical capabilities, it doesn't matter how much experience you have, you cannot reproduce. And those physical abilities can be taken from you with these chemicals. These drugs, and they are drugs, I want to point this out to you, every single one of them, doesn't matter if it comes with a prescription or with a nice little baggie, they are drugs. Okay? They are mind-altering chemicals. If it alters the way that you think, naturally, if you naturally think a certain way and these chemicals make you think a different way, if you naturally feel pain but these chemicals stop you from feeling pain, well then you are taking something that is mind altering and it alters your perception. And your perception is what dictates how you learn. Now, I was on chemicals from the time I was 4 years old until the time I was 18. Doctors literally shoving them down my throat when I wouldn't allow them to give it to me and take it. I fought back at the very end. I almost died simply from taking psychotropic and psychological medications. Now, I still smoke weed. That's because my body can't make endocannabinoids. Part of my spleen, a small part of my liver, and a certain portion of my large intestine were removed during my last bout of action. And, well, I wouldn't say my last bout of action. I'd say my last bit of action that I almost didn't come home from. I got stabbed in the chest, and it went through my anterior vena cava. Or no, my anterior vena cava, the front, my ab wall, and through the blade of my liver, and through through my diaphragm, through my spleen, and nicked the top end of my large intestine, top left side. Now, if it wouldn't have been for the doctor removing these parts, and coincidentally these are the parts that endocannabinoids are found to be most proficient and most profuse in, which is because they are the centers where the endocannabinoids are made. Your spleen is not a filter for blood. It is an endocannabinoid factory. So when these endocannabinoids aren't attached to your blood cells anymore, your blood cells don't attach to the proper cells in your body anymore, and then they can't relate oxygen as efficiently, and they can't relate nutrients as efficiently, and white blood cells start to see these dying cells as offensive to the body, and so they start attacking the body, and that's where rheumatism comes from. That's where arthritis comes from. It's not from, I socked a chair as a kid, so now my pinky finger hurts. That's what's called prior injury, and you're a dumbass. By the way, I did do that. That's why I don't have a knuckle there. So, yes, I've rambled on quite a bit here, and I've talked a lot about this and all that, but I want to point out to you that it doesn't matter what doctor it is. If they have to prescribe it to you because it is a controlled substance, if it is not 100% natural, meaning not only naturally sourced, but naturally occurring, meaning it's a plant. Okay, that's it. It's a plant that naturally occurs. It naturally grows out of the ground. Like, you see that arrowweed sagebrush behind me, aka creosote willow? This stuff right here. All right there. All along the ground. All of those creosote willow are, they're naturally occurring plants. And some of them, some plants, including the creosote willow, have a natural herbal remedy in the plant. Okay, those creosote willows actually have an antibiotic that naturally occurs in the leaves, in the fleshy parts of the leaves, and in the flower buds. Now, these antibiotics, they're not really potent. I mean, in fact, they're kind of less than potent by themselves. But when you put them together with the alkaloids and the other chemicals that are found in the leaves and in the buds of the plant, they become as powerful as Cyprol. Now, how many of you have heard of Cyprol? Not a whole bunch of you, huh? Well, how many of you have heard of anthrax? A whole lot more of you now, haven't you? Well, Cyprol is the antibiotic specific that was designed to destroy anthrax, specifically of the weaponized kind. And yet this plant back here does the same thing. So tell me something. If you can get the same effects from a couple of leaves and a flower and a mug of hot water, why the fuck are you going to go and spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a chemical which your body doesn't need, doesn't recognize, and will destroy your immune system, when you can do that plant right there that's growing up right here? Okay, I'm having to look at the camera while I'm pointing, so bear with me. You see this big green bush right here? It's called creosote willow. I'm going to walk over there and I'm going to grab some for you so we can take a good look at it. Because this is an antibiotic that grows right here in your backyard and actually happens to be very potent if you know how to use it. So let's go take a look. Now, if you'll notice, I left the base of that plant there. A lot of people will actually pull the root, and this is not a good idea. For one, there's no antibiotic chemicals in the root itself. The root is absolutely useless, except to reproduce the plant. This is part of Native American medicine, okay? When you go and you cut a plant, you take the root off. You see, there's no root on this. This is all just bark, leaves, stem, leaves, and a little tiny bud there at the top, okay? You can barely see it sitting there at the tip of the whole thing. Now, this plant has another name. It's called arrowweed. And it's highly antibiotic. It's actually such an antibiotic that if I were to sit here and chew on the pith, like this, for more than, a few minutes at a time, 30, 40 minutes at a time or whatever, this can make it so that all the bacteria in my stomach are dead. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing when you're trying to avoid being, getting a viral infection, but when you have other infections, like, say, if you can see that there, that's from me losing my temper, but instead of punching somebody, I punched a wall. Instead of, going and making a gun and going shooting somebody, I just decided, hey, this is gonna hurt, but the pain will stop me from thinking of these sort of things. So I did. I punched a wall. Well, understandably, it's kind of stupid. You break things like that. But anyways, so let's go over this plant. First and foremost, you can see that already inside of the bark, it's starting to break down. That's salicylic acid. That's the same stuff that's in willows. That's why this is called a creosote willow. All right? This brown and this black that's in this plant that you can see here, all of that happens to be full-on salicylic acid, and it's very prevalent here in the bark of the plant. And I'm going to try and rub off some of the fuzz on the outside so you can actually see that it starts off green. See? It starts off green. And then it turns black. Now that we've been over that part, I'm going to show you how to shuck one of these plants so that you can use it. First, you grasp at the base of the stem, holding the base of the stem. All right, you got to have a good place to do that, so if you have to, you shed off a couple of these little branches. Now, you grasp at the base of the stem with your fingers in a kind of a lobster pincher kind of a look, like that, okay? Grasp here, and you pull. See that? That's a sage bundle. I can use that for aromatics. I can use it in a tea. I can use it to make a poultice and staunch a wound, what have you. This is a very useful plant. Now we'll put that down. We're going to take a look at the bark. Now, looking at this bark, already you can see why it's called an arrowweed. I mean, long, thin, straight as an arrow. What do you know? So anyways, let's take a look at the bark. You can already see it's starting to turn much more black there, isn't it? And I haven't touched any dirt with this. This hasn't touched anything oily or nothing, okay? This has been in my hands the entire time. This is salicylic acid. This is aspirin, okay? So what we're gonna do is we are going to shuck this. Now you can see the difference there, right? Okay, now notice how as soon as I shucked that dot right there started showing up. That's because salicylic acid breaks down biological proteins, okay? Specifically plant proteins. So you see what I'm doing here? I'm just letting this roll along my thumb, keeping tension on the bark, kind of like you would for making rope. You see how that fell off there now, right? Got a long strip of salicylic acid in its major medium. Now this we would take and we'd wrap it up, okay? You take this and fold it down into a small ball. You stick that in your mortar and pestle. And you sit there and you pound on that thing until it's a bunch of thin fibers. And you add a little bit of water. And you let it sit for another 10-15 minutes and let the water turn brown. Then you take out this little bundle of fibers and you strain that water through a coffee filter. This is a painkiller. Now, remember how I said this thing has antibiotics in it?